All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started if everyone's ready. First off, I just wanted to say good afternoon and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this webinar. I think it's our third TRC webinar of the year, and it is entitled Implementing Strategic Rebranding and Behavior Change Campaign. So this webinar is being put on by the Tennessee Recycling Coalition in collaboration with TDEC and Resource Recycling Systems. My name is Caleb Powell, and I am I'm a current board member of TRC and an environmental scientist for the Office of Policy and Sustainable Practices. I will be hosting the webinar today for our wonderful speaker. So everyone is muted upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise, but if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to ask those in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and send a chat to everyone right now. So you should see that in your chat box over on the right-hand side. All right. And then if you have any comments, please send those there. If you're having any audio issue or anything like that, please make sure to send that. You'll notice that there is a send to and a little drop-down box. Now that box probably already says all participants. Make sure that if you're sending a question that you have either all panelists or the host and presenter. Just make sure that the host is in there or all is in one of those drop downs. So making sure that I get that question and I can send that to ask that to our speaker. Now, to give you an idea and an overview of what's going to be covered today, implementing a strategic rebranding campaign for residents. This is a case study, and how personalizing and making your message measurable is effective in reaching residents about recycling and waste. So working with integrating qualitative research in messaging to deepen your message impact. So we're happy that you guys are joining this interactive presentation to engage in behavior change and how that works. So we're going to be discussing a couple case studies. The main one is the Every Blue Cart Makes a Difference recycling campaign, and this received visible commitments from over 5,000 Lakelanders to use plastic bag-free recycling carts by making a visible commitment to place a sticker on their carts. So it's something as simple as placing a sticker on the carts was able to make a visible commitment and have commitments from over 5,000 different homes or residents in Lakeland. So I wanted to start out, and if you can go to the next slide, I wanted to start out just by talking about some stuff that's been going on with TRC. Before we get into it, we just recently had our TRC annual conference. This year we collaborated with TCCI, and it was an amazing conference. We were very excited to get back in person. We've strayed away from the in-person events due to COVID-19, but we're excited to get back to that. We had a very good conference, lots of different breakout sessions, a great keynote speaker, and we also had our 2021 Recycler of the Year Awards. So each year TRC honors the most dedicated and successful individuals and organizations working to advance recycling in our state. The award dinner is a highlight of 3 days of learning and networking organized by the Tennessee Recycling Coalition that was held at the Park Vista in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So if you weren't able to attend, we really hope that you can do that next year. It's a great event, great networking, and all around just a fun time. So I wanted to highlight our 2021 Recycler of the Year awards. The Bailey Company was our 2021 Business Recycler of the Year. Turnip Green Creative Reuse won the 2021 Innovator of the Year Award. Cumberland County won the 2021 Government Recycler of the Year Award. Chester County High School and Tennessee College of Applied Technology won the K-12 Recycler of the Year Award, and Nancy Zion won the 2021 Tom Haddle Memorial Award. So if you want to know more about this, visit our website. We've got all those and a more detailed overview of their projects and how they won that award. So make sure to check out our website. At the end of the webinar, I will put our website URL in the chat so that you can have that and check it out. So with that being said, Marissa, if you want to go ahead and go to your title page, I'm going to introduce our speaker today. Marissa Segundo is a senior communications strategist with more than 15 years of experience in successful strategic planning, media relations, and team leadership. As a bilingual communicator, Marissa is proud to be a proactive bridge builder to the Hispanic community. She has provided clients in the public and private sectors as well as product stewardship initiatives with innovative communications plans centered on sustainability, waste reduction, and recycling. Marissa utilizes a variety of digital and traditional outreach methods and stresses the importance of understanding your impact through measurement of effort. Prior to being with RRS, Marissa was the recycling coordinator for the city of Largo, Florida, where she regularly appeared on both English and Spanish television to promote recycling and waste reduction in Largo and the Tampa Bay area. Her recycling communications strategies have earned multiple awards at the local, state, national, and international levels. Marissa is accredited in public relations and lead and is a certified recycling systems manager. She was named a Waste 360 40 Under 40 recipient in 2020. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it all over to Marissa. Very excited to hear what you've got to tell us today.
Thank you so much, Caleb. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much to the TRC for inviting me to present today. I'm very excited to be here and to share some of these examples of behavior change in strategic communication. So Caleb touched on and I think most of you are hopefully are familiar with the company that I work for, Resource Recycling Systems, or RRS. I always say we're easy to find at recycle.com. But we are a recycling and sustainability consultancy. We've been around since 1986, and we've been solely focused on the recycling and recovery industry and global corporate sustainability. So a lot of different ways that over the past 35 years, we've been plus years, that we've been able to incorporate and learn from the past and look forward to the future as well. So my focus is communications, as Caleb referred to, and so I'm hoping for an interactive experience here. So if you are joining, I think most of us, you are joining us via computer. So we're going to do a live poll, and this is very simple. So I'm going to go to the poll, and if you just want to open a new browser, and Caleb put a link to the polling software. So all you have to do is click on that link. It should open a new window to the pollev.com and directly to the poll you're seeing right here. So this is a word cloud, so we only want you to use one word. What do you value the most about recycling? And whether you want to answer this from the perspective of someone who runs a recycling program, or what you, maybe even a recycler, hopefully a recycler yourself, but what do you value most about recycling? And we'll start to see some of these answers come in, and they'll cloud up. We have an intimate group here, so we may not have too big of a cloud, but that's okay. There we go. There's our first one: sustainability, excellent. Environment, definitely. The economy, that's a perfect one. And as those come in, and if people repeat a word, like someone just said sustainability, and then it kind of stacks one on top of the other, the environment comes up again. Conservation, resource, conservation, all right. And looks like, let's just try to figure out which one's coming in. So conservation seems to be doing well. Stewardship, circularity. All right, conservation seems to be the winner, and but we've got a lot of good input here. I'll let those just kind of roll for a minute, because that may be actually everybody on. So recycling means different things to different people, and that's kind of the crux of what we're trying to get at here when we look at strategic communication. So the question is, have you asked your residents this? A lot of times we make assumptions based on residents calling in, based on emails, based on social media, what our residents actually care about. And I always talk with my public sector hat on because I can't quite take my public sector hat off. But providing value to residents is beneficial whether you're on the private sector or the public sector. But, you know, we saw in this industry, a lot of people that are on this call are in similar industries, but recycling and what you value about recycling means very different things. So, have you asked your residents? When we're talking about, and the reason why I'm going to bring that up because that's the most important part, that is the first of the circular strategic communications wheel that you'll see here. So you've got research, which is the #1 first thing you want to do, planning, followed by implementation, and then evaluation. All of these 4 elements work together to really create a strategy. The tendency I always see, and I see it amongst my own group, I see it amongst our clients, where the first thing you want to jump to is the tactics. So let's do this fun social media campaign, or what about this fun slogan? Let's throw this out there and do that. Well, if you haven't done the first 2 aspects of this, your message may be short-sighted to what actually is resonating with your residents. So, Caleb referred to a case study we did in the city of Lakeland. This is Florida, so we're in the farthest part of Southeast. That's where I'm actually based. But they had very unique challenges in the city of Lakeland. So they have an in-house collection system. They had excellent, and you'll see some of the stats in a moment here, but it's an in-house collection system and a private MRSA processes their recyclables. So their first challenge was they wanted to see a decrease in the amount of recycling contamination they were seeing through the MRF. The other challenge they had is that they're a city of about 94,000 people that is surrounded by a county. And to make it more fun, you'll have a house on a street where 4 of the houses are city of Lakeland and 2 of them are Polk County. So for messaging, it was a big challenge for them. The solution was to create a distinct program brand that would encourage behavior change amongst the residents and also decrease on that contamination. So here's a little bit of the numbers. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you'll get an idea based on recycling audits and information from the MRF. They are very involved in the community. This is obviously all pre-COVID, at least these numbers are. So they were out in the community. They had an active website. They were had a lot of calls coming through their call center, and they were even able to, because their carts have a RFID reader, have a pretty accurate set out rate. So that was really helpful as far as some initial research. So when RRS joined the team, joined the Lakeland team to figure out and solve these problems, we started with one-on-one interviews with city staff, with their communications and marketing. They have a great communications and marketing department. We got in trucks and rode along with both solid waste drivers and recycling drivers. We talked to supervisors in the recycling department and the solid waste department. They have a recycling educator. We talked to her. And then we went outside of solid waste completely and went to the customer service line that you made, a city hall type of answering service to find out what kind of calls they were getting. We reviewed the old recycling composition study that they had, and then we also looked at all their communications collateral and did a little bit of an evaluation. The first thing after all of that was compiled and we got our data, we put that together and we realized that what we were missing was the input from the residents. So we worked with the communications and marketing department to put together a survey. They actually had a unique platform where they had an in-house survey that also encouraged residents to give solutions to the problem. So that was an interesting way to do this. We had a really great response rate. About 1,600 respondents, more than 1,600 respondents. You see the demographics there. I won't go through those. But one of the things I mentioned that the collateral material that they were using, this was designed, this is a recycling flyer that their communications and marketing department designed. So we wanted to test, is this hitting the mark with residents, or are there elements that are creating confusion? So we asked residents, if you're looking at this cart or this guide, what do you feel like can be recycled? And the green bars are the things that they actually got right. Those are things that you can recycle. But there was some confusion items, bagged recyclables, foam packaging. The city actually used to collect foam packaging, and so there was some confusion as far as that's concerned. Batteries, yard waste. So some confusion we were seeing with that, and which encouraged us to make sure that the images that we were displaying were clear, that the image was clear, and we were using best practices. Remember when I was asking about what you value with recycling? Well, in Lakeland, their residents value most about Lakeland's recycling program was really making a difference. And so we grabbed onto that idea, and you'll see when we get to the planning part how that actually worked out. All right, back to the poll. We're going to do one more poll, and this one's multiple choice. When was the last time you surveyed your residents? And don't be shy, it's okay. If you haven't, it's never too late to start going to your residents and asking them what they think. We're going to see those numbers coming in. We're leaning not a whole lot of recent surveys happening right now. It looks like that none of the above are the 1 to 3 years, which is good. And I don't see those lines moving, so no worries if you are towards the end of that. We also are, just as a side note, during the pandemic, a lot of communication sometimes got a little bit slower. I actually found that the pandemic was a great time to reach out to residents about recycling. It was almost like, I don't want to say, well, you basically had an audience of people that were looking and seeking information, actually paying a little bit more attention to their recycling in some cases because they were at home more and they maybe had a little bit more spare time to maybe go to a website or look up the rules for recycling or watch a video on recycling. So I'm also going to talk about an example where we use these 4 elements: research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. RRS was contracted by the New York City Housing Authority, which I will be referring to as NYCHA for the rest of this presentation. They really wanted to have a strategic behavior change campaign focused on several different things, not just recycling. So they wanted to see a reduction in pet waste. So people that don't pick up their pet poop, you're going to hear poop a lot in this presentation, in a bag and put it in its appropriate location. In NYCHA buildings, some of them are 21 to 22 stories high, and all of their trash in a multifamily setting is collected in trash chutes. And so they're, a little box that looks like that. You put your trash bags in there and it goes down a chute to the first floor. They also wanted to see proper waste disposal, whether it was in the way of litter or even what we were calling misplaced waste, so entire bags of trash that were just put not in the appropriate location. And then they weren't necessarily as concerned about recycling contamination as they were wanting to see an increase in recycling participation. So we did do a survey as well, but before we even did that, we did the same one-on-one interviews with, they call them caretakers, the people that are around the facilities, tenant association managers, property managers, any volunteer organizations and resident association individuals that we could talk to. And so based on those one-on-one interviews, they even had previous surveys, which I suggest, especially the people that had that answered this survey kind of towards the end of, maybe you had a survey a couple of years ago, bring those out. Look at the data from those. You can actually use those as baseline. And so when we were looking at other studies that were done on behalf of NYCHA around solid waste, we were seeing gaps in those, like they're actually not even asking about recycling. And because recycling is what I consider the ultimate behavior change, trying to get people to throw garbage away isn't really as hard of a challenge as to say, okay, you need to recycle these particular items in this particular state in this particular place, and you have to maybe take an extra step to do that. So I feel like it's the ultimate behavior change, so asking residents specific recycling questions really get to other types of openness to change their behavior. So since we had a lot of different areas to cover and we didn't really want to overwhelm them with questions, we tried to keep the survey questions to about 10, which I feel like is best practice. NYCHA has a lot of languages, so we worked with their staff to translate this survey into 5 different languages. And we did use a SurveyMonkey format, which you can actually modify to have multiple languages and just with a little drop-down screen. So that was something I was unaware of before we did this project. We had a great response. The survey was out for 3 weeks, and we got, and this went out to all of NYCHA's residents. Those 5,535 respondents. So it was great. We asked them basic questions about recycling, and we even had baseline questions to have people identify how frequently they recycle, and then analyze that data to be a little bit more specific to our target audience. So as far as recycling was concerned, we asked them what they think most people think about recycle, or why do they think most people recycle. And there was an overwhelming response for taking personal responsibility for the waste that they create. So we didn't stop at the surveys. Once we had the survey data, we transitioned to focus groups. And due to the fact that we did this in 2020, we had online focus groups via Zoom. We had several residents from pilot facilities, and I say pilot facilities because we narrowed down this particular project to 5 developments throughout NYCHA facilities. And then the hope is to take our best practices from these facilities once this campaign is finished and make that scalable throughout their development. And I didn't give that little bit of extra information, but there's about 500,000 people that live in New York City Housing Authority development. So it's a lot of people and a lot of different barriers and benefits for creating behavior change in this type of site. So the online focus groups actually went really well. The residents that participated were excited to learn more and to share their information. And just as a side note, I constantly find that people are usually very open to giving information about recycling, and as long as there's ears that want to hear what they have to say. So the focus groups went well. We're going to switch to the planning part of that 4-part strategic communication. And we'll go back to Lakeland. You may get a little dizzy because I'm going to be flipping back and forth between these two, so just let me know if you have any questions as we go. So Lakeland survey, remember that was taken by about 1,600 residents. Their key takeaways from that survey were really what we focused on was this middle thing. What residents value is that they're making a difference. We also noted that there were barriers to recycling with apathy and confusion. So residents being confused about what items to recycle or not to recycle, and then obviously people maybe just not caring as much as they want to. I will note that due to the confusion with Polk County, we did make sure that residents that took our survey were specifically City of Lakeland residents. So they have 2 different colored carts, and you'll see that when we get into the tactics. And we showed pictures of the county's recycling carts and said, or actually we showed Lakeland's recycle carts and said, if your carts don't look like this, then click here, and it took you to the county's website. So we really wanted to make sure that we were laser focused on City of Lakeland residents and not getting input that could bias our data for the city of Lakeland. So moving forward, we narrowed down this to the, as I kind of already alluded to, the branding Lakeland's blue cart. So Lakeland has a blue cart, and Polk County, I believe, has a green cart for recycling. So we really wanted to focus on that. We really wanted to focus on contamination, recycling the correct items, and simplifying any type of confusion. when we did all those reviews of their contamination study, we realized that the most, and this is not going to come as a shock to anyone on the phone, nor did it come as a shock to me, their most damaging recyclable contamination were bags recyclable. So we had kind of a sub-campaign that was focused solely on plastic bags. And then from our data, we also heard from the drivers that spacing the carts away from obstacles was a huge thing. So we did incorporate that in our foundational research. So we were looking at, you can't measure if you don't set goals at the beginning. So we did work hand in hand with the city to decide what are some goals that are achievable. You always want to have those SMART goals. So specific, measurable, attainable, and time-based. So that's why you'll see all of those elements in all of these goals. So the first one, we wanted to decrease recycling contamination by 5% in a 6-month period. If anyone pays attention to your contamination numbers, that is a little lofty to say 5%. Sometimes you're lucky to get a 1 to 2% shift in a 6-month period, but we wanted to have a good goal for that. So we also wanted to see behavior change. I mentioned the bag recyclables. We, as we get into the tactics, we were thinking about how can we make this campaign such that residents are making a visible commitment. Residents can fill out pledges, which is nice, and they can do a variety of things, but we really wanted to see them take an additional step to show that not only did they receive the message that their recycling shouldn't be bagged, but that they actually made a visible commitment, and you'll see that when we get into the tactics. And then also we wanted to see that 20% of the residents would recognize that recyclables should be clean, dry, and empty in a post-campaign survey. So after we do the entire campaign, we launch it, we come back with another survey. Now we have our baseline survey data. We want to see what the level of change is at the end of the campaign. So I'm going to flip the page. We're going to go to NYCHA. So now we're in New York, away from Florida. And the key takeaways from that, mainly the survey data, was that residents were willing, and the focus group, I should say, the focus group data also complemented this. They were willing to talk to friends and family about recyclables, but they weren't as keen on talking to their neighbors. So if the neighbor doesn't fall into the friend category, they wouldn't be knocking on doors saying, yes, I'll talk to you about recycling and I don't know you. But they may be willing to talk to their friends and family and about the resources for recycling. So that was positive and an important distinction. Also, making a visible commitment to not litter. So that's back to the pledge. This idea of making a commitment falls in the area of community-based social marketing, which many of you have probably heard of. But having residents make a physical commitment where they have to do something or see something on a regular basis to show their commitment really does create behavior change. But that alone doesn't create behavior change. So what you'll see in both of these examples is a multimodal way of looking at communication. Also taking a personal responsibility for the waste that they create. And so you'll see that in the recycling messaging too. So measurement planning. I am a huge fan of what are our operational goals and how do we make sure that we're measuring this on physical items. So in Lakeland, we can put a 5% contamination, we want to decrease contamination and go back and do a study and see, now we have our baseline study and do that again. Well, for litter, sometimes that's a little bit more difficult, litter and misplaced waste and dog poop. So we took not only the 5 pilot buildings that you see on the left, on the left, and then we had some control sites on the right that were similar in size and infrastructure and all of those things. So we had, with the help of Green City Force, which is an engagement nonprofit that works in New York City housing authorities, help us go around, get some baseline numbers, understand kind of what was out there now, and then how that improved as it improves, or maybe doesn't improve as the campaign goes forward. So, setting goals, we actually set goals in all those different areas. I'm going to just for time, basically for time, I'm just going to focus on the pet waste prevention. So we have our target audience being pet owners. We have a target development. Of those 5 developments that you saw, we had a main focus campaign for that one. We picked walls because based on the data that we had as far as pet registration, so registering your pet, like I have a pet and it is this old and it lives here. That is something that is required by the New York City Housing Authority, but not actively promoted. And so we are trying to, with some of these tactics, create a pet culture where people can feel proud of their pet. They can feel that NYCHA is excited about them having a pet, and they can participate in responsible pet behavior as well. So once again, we have that baseline with the misplaced waste. Yes, people are going around and counting piles of dog poop that shouldn't be there in specific zones. So I know you're jealous that that's not your job, but that's what was happening with this campaign. And we also created pet training videos, and you'll see a little bit of that. Just because sometimes people, you know, they just don't, maybe if they haven't had pets in the past, they may not know some of the same best practices for pets. We also had posters. So of those videos, we want to see 100 views within the first 2 months. So once again, putting a time frame and an action item with our goals. I have some of the outreach tactics here as far as pets, but I'm going to move forward based on time, and we'll get to the implementation phase. We're flying, and I'm assuming everyone's picking up all of these paper airplanes and not lettering them. Okay, so pet owners. We're going to stay on NYCHA for now, and then we'll flip back to Lakeland in just a moment. So what we were realizing is that these pet waste stations, I'm sure you've seen them if you have a pet or you've just seen them walking around. NYCHA facilities had these little bag stations where you could grab a bag and use it for your pet. Apparently those actually were used as water balloons and all sorts of things. The moment somebody refilled them, they were gone. So we heard this in all of our research, the survey, even the past surveys that we looked at. And so we realized, what is a way that we can do this and actually put it in the pet owner's hands? So we have an incentivized program where pet owners, if their pet is registered, they get one of those little doggy leash bag holders that's, it's like a roll of bags in your leash. You can carry it around that and pick up the pet food as you're walking your pup. So, and then we were out at events and encouraging pet owners to use them and also to register their pets. We also had the dog training video, so they could watch a little snippet of that and had just different tips on the screen. This is actually at a NYCHA facility. This is a NYCHA pet owner, and really, and it's also branded by NYCHA. And so it's showing this commitment to it's not a bad thing to have a pet. It's a good thing. We just want to make sure that you are being a responsible pet owner. We actually worked with a local animal rescue organization, and they helped to give, to host the tips for your pet. So it was a good overall effort. So I mentioned this was a lot of different themes. This is some of the artwork that we put together. These are actually at NYCHA facilities and with NYCHA residents, really encouraging smaller and less full bags going down the chutes. Some of these chutes are very, very small, and if you're trying to shove a big black hefty bag in there, it's not actually going to work. We also really kept in mind some of the themes. Actually, I'm going to go right back to this one. This theme in the corner is really important. My mother always taught me to clean up my things. What we found out from the focus groups that we didn't hear in the survey, so just to give you an idea of how having an additional focus group helps to give a little bit more qualitative data from a survey, we found this real generational connection to NYCHA. people saying, my mom grew up in NYCHA building, or my grandmother was in NYCHA building. And it was just this idea of family and kind of keeping things, teaching the next generation, but really focused on that generational connection to NYCHA. I mentioned we did these in 5 different languages. So this is, I believe, in simplified Chinese, and we did these in English and in Spanish. All of those 6 campaigns that you saw were in all 5 languages. And we laminated them and hung them up around NYCHA facilities, all of those 5 pilot facilities. And we also, as far as, I'm not going to focus a lot on using the chutes, but we went through all of these garbage chutes, thousands of garbage chutes, and we made some signage that went right above the garbage chute that just had a smaller bag, and it pointed downward. It didn't have any words on it, but it was just kind of reminding people this is where your garbage goes. And it had a QR code that led to a landing page that was specific to these pilot buildings and could be scalable on a larger scale. So as far as recycling, we worked with Sims Municipal Recycling. They are the processor in New Jersey for all of the New York City Housing Authority's recyclables. We also worked with the Department of Sanitation. I'm going to switch to this because I'm just going to show you this really quick. This is a signage that is already on their recycling containers. A facility, one development may have 5 of these throughout the entire building, but they're not very big, and that creates a barrier. So we wanted to draw attention to the bins, best practice. What we did during the focus group is to show a little bit of the behind the scenes of what happens to your recyclables, the recycling magic that happens at the MRF. And so I'm going to show you a very quick 30-second video, and hopefully it works. There is music to it, and it's kind of funky, and if you don't hear it, we can just send you a link to the video. So we really wanted to give this idea of the start to finish process of you put it in here and this is what happens to it, and it's just in your backyard. We may be adding a piece onto this video to even show, working with Pratt Recycling, all of their paper and cardboard goes to Pratt and is made into new boxes. And so that may be added on to this to show that not only is it processed here, it becomes new recyclable. All right, flipping the page. Now we're in Lakeland again. Now we're in Florida. So just a couple of their tactics. It was really important for us to do a full rebrand. It happens where sometimes communities, they'll want to rebrand, they'll want to do something for their recycling program. They'll have a couple of things, maybe they'll put it on their website, and then the brand starts to get stale because they have some things with the old brand on it, and maybe it's confusing. So we really wanted to do a full facelift in Lakeland. And so everything from their event tablecloth, their truck, their website, everything they had this new brand on it, including we kicked off the, well, actually two ways. One way we kicked off this program was you see Debbie there at an America Recycles Day at their local library. We're engaging, we're talking one-on-one with residents about the program on America Recycles Day. Then we involved the mayor, sending a letter to their single-family homes regarding recycling and a contest that we were challenging them to do. So this comes in the area of that personal commitment. And essentially, there was a little sticker, and you'll see that in the video in just a moment, that they put on the outside of their cart that says no bagged recyclables. And so the entire bag-free recycling campaign that we had for Lakeland really focused on loose in the cart, we have the young woman you see here is using a double laminated bag that you can fill your recycling indoor, take it outdoor, and then leave it in a cart. So that was an effective tool. The letter to the mayor gave them that challenge. They got the sticker, they put it on the outside of their cart, and then I'll talk about the evaluation of that in just a moment. Hopefully this video will come through. This is just a quick, once again, if you don't hear the audio, we're not saying anything amazing. Sorry. So hopefully you could hear our snappy little music, but like I said, you didn't miss much. But what that video intended to do was to show the multimodal ways that we were reaching out to residents. We were engaging with local media. We were at events. The contest, the Spot the Sticker contest, I'll explain here in a moment in the evaluation section. But that's what the mayor's letter was about. We want to spot your sticker. And so all of the carts that people had put the sticker on, we ended up, and in that video, I don't know if it was clear, the winners of the Spot the Sticker contest, we went to their house with a recycling bag full of goodies. They got a gift certificate, and actually their local media covered that event. So it's just another way to engage with residents. You see everyone's masked because it was during COVID, and we are trying to keep everybody safe. So the Spot the Sticker campaign, just a little, I mentioned the RFID in the cart. Basically, the RFID, all it's doing is saying the cart was tipped on this day or whatnot. But Lakeland has this cool system in their truck where they have a button that they can press. And when they press this button, it generates a tick mark or something in a report that goes to their office that they can check. So we trained the drivers. The drivers are really important in this, and it was really important to us to make sure that the drivers felt included in the overall communications campaign. All too often, when you have an in-house fleet, you tell drivers, you will do this, you will tag this cart, and they don't feel committed to this at all. The drivers were actually kind of creating a little competition amongst each other of like how many stickers they were finding. But, you know, their primary responsibility is picking up recycling carts. So there were some areas that, as we went back and verified, areas that seemed light, we had the recycling coordinator go out and kind of trail a truck and just see like, okay, that one is marked, that one's not, that kind of thing. So just a double check to make sure that was good. And Lakeland's program, distinct, and I often get questions when I present on their program, is that they do, if they have repeat offenders for contamination, meaning that they have pressed, there's also a contamination button. That's what these buttons actually exist for. We just added another one for when the drivers see the sticker, they press the button. But if after the 7 instances of receiving a letter or some type of notification, then a recycling cart is pulled for contamination. So you can see this map shows where the more than 5,000 commitments were made. We are going to regenerate this in the winter of this year, going around and actually placing stickers ourselves on places that don't currently have a sticker and see if that makes a difference in a study. Okay, I mentioned we're still in Lakeland. We went back and did a post-campaign survey. So you see the demographics here, still pretty good participation, 1,100 people, good breakout of demographics there. And we talked about cart placement. 92% of the people who responded always place their cart away from recyclables. I'm just going to throw this out there. A lot of times when you ask residents about their behavior, that halo gets really bright, like they don't ever do anything wrong. Sometimes I like to ask questions like this just to remind them that they're not supposed to place their, like, it's nice if everybody says that they do, but the real part is them taking a second thought, like, oh, that is kind of close to my car, I'm going to move that. So sometimes you ask questions because you really want to know the response, and sometimes you ask it as an education question. So keep that in mind. So we really wanted to get to what are actions, what would you be willing to do? And we asked this in NYCHA too, as far as what are you willing to do to improve recycling? And in NYCHA we asked some other things according to those, to their areas of focus. But 90 or 80% of people said that they would commit to just reading and understanding the guidelines. That in and of itself is huge. If people just take a second moment to look at their recycling guidelines, that makes a big difference. They said 60% said they would encourage others to participate, and maybe explain a little bit about what wish cycling is. And then more than half said that they would sign an anti-bagging pledge or a pledge not to bag their recyclables. Do you remember our goals? We had talked about the preparation of the recyclables, and so we asked residents, you know, if they received the message as far as clean, empty, and dry. Granted, in our communication, all those tactics that you saw, we really didn't focus on dry. That was a little bit of an afterthought and more of a push from the MERC. We really focused on clean and empty. So 76% of the people said they didn't really understand dry. And that's okay, because actually it just confirms that our clean and empty message was powerful and rang true with people. We also asked them what communications platform, where have they seen messages about recycling? And that mailer was the top one. So there wasn't some people said email, not many said emails, but a whole lot of the respondents said that they would like to receive regular email. So Lakeland can then opt to have their own listserv and communicate with residents excuse me, via email. All right, let's go back to our goals. Do you remember our lofty goal for 5% recycling? Well, we actually got it up to 6% within 6 months of the campaign launch. Some of the routes, because we took it actually and did an evaluation and broke down which routes were most impacted. Some of them saw 20 to 40% reduction in contamination. That's huge. Then we looked at the commitments. I already spoiled that one with my with that evaluation piece. You already know about the 5,100 people that made that commitment. That represents 12% of Lakeland's residents that placed a sticker on the cart. It's really hard to get 12% of residents to do anything, let alone to go out of their way to place a sticker on the outside of their cart. And I did get a lot of pushback from the marketing department. They said, well, why don't you just have the drivers stick it on there? And I said, if the drivers stick it on there, they'll never see it because they don't look at the cart as much. But if they take the time to do it, they will actually find that impact. Okay, and then 89% of people recognize that the recyclables should be clean, empty, and dry. Now, granted, that would be much higher if it was just clean and empty, as I mentioned. All of this campaign cost Lakeland $1.75 per household. That entire rebrand, everything. So really cool and affordable. And I don't have any evaluation things for NYCHA because we're in the process of implementing this campaign right now. So we're doing the events, we're getting resident feedback, and we're doing some evaluation. So I look forward to coming back and talking to you someday about how that works out. So the main question is what motivates your residents to recycle? What do they value about recycling? And you can change out the word recycling with composting, with yard waste, with whatever recovery effort that you're looking at. But the big thing is how will you measure it? Measurement doesn't have to be overwhelming. And I know a lot of times people look at measurement as like, I don't have time, I don't have staff. Look at the things that you have the ability to measure that you're already measuring as part of your program and see how you can implement that into a communications campaign. So that's all I have. I think we've got some time for questions, Caleb, on that. I see, I don't know, Caleb can unmute on.
yeah, make sure if anybody has any questions for Marissa on the presentation that she just gave, make sure to put those in the chat, or feel free if you'd rather, ask that yourself. There's a little hand emoji that if you raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can ask that yourself. So, let's see, hang on. I'm not seeing, do you see any in your chat? Oh, actually, here we go. It says, you mentioned pilots and control site efforts. Great for a scientific perspective and approach, but for control sites, would you not prefer to have the same boroughs to compare apples and apples and make sure no policies, laws, or cultural issues don't statistically infer with the data analysis? I mean, were there not enough buildings to do this?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, Larry. Thank you. We relied on NYCHA, so we did not have any input on the original pilot facilities. NYCHA already had those picked out. And then on the control side, we were looking for scalable data points. So the same number of, even if it was in a different borough, it was, the same amount of units, the same kind of layout. I don't really remember all of the factors, but we tried to keep the factors of the building. Some, as I mentioned, some are high rises, some are kind of towers, 4 towers or 6 towers, and some are shorter buildings. So we try to keep like the building demographics similar, even if the borough wasn't the same. And as far as the demographics within the buildings, there was similar demographics, and we bared that in mind as far as putting out the language, the different language campaign information. So we made sure that if this was a heavily, Chinese-speaking area, that those posters were out there in addition to the English posters.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that question, Larry. And so I have a question. So you mentioned the RFIDs on in the RFID readers. Is that something that's like normal? Excuse my ignorance, but like that, I did some research on that a while back, and I just didn't know if like these rural communities have RFID readers, and how does that sort of help with picking up recyclables and stuff like that?
Yeah. So RFID readers are great. Usually they're embedded in a cart if you're doing a cart rollout. I think if you do a recycling partnership, I'll be quiet because I don't know if it's required, but I think they encourage if you've got an RFID, it really helps to, as far as measurement, just to judge what your participation is. But it's just a little kind of chippy, like it's not a chip, it's like a sticker you put on your cart, and then you have a reader on the truck. And so some places it's commonplace. It's very common here in Florida. Other places pick up on it. It's usually not the actual RFID stickers that are the cost prohibitive part. Sometimes it's the readers, or it's an operational thing, like my hauler doesn't have it, or it's not in my contract or whatnot. But it's great to find out how what your actual usage is for participation. I will admit that I was a recycling coordinator running around when we had bins and just analyzing neighborhoods with tick marks and counters, those little hand counter things that you use. So RFID for me was a great thing because I wasn't going around just using counters.
Awesome. I don't see any more questions coming in, but make sure, if you have these questions that come up a little bit later, I know there was a lot of information given. You see Marissa's contact information. I'm sure she would be happy to answer any questions you have that might come up a little bit later. And then also, you could also send those questions or emails to me. My email is Caleb, CALEB, Powell, POWELL, @tn.gov. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you again to Marissa taking your time and sharing these case studies that you guys have completed and that are ongoing. It's cool to see the work that you're doing and how different cities and different sizes of cities can still take on the big challenge of recycling and find different ways to be good at it. And so also I'd like to thank everyone that registered and that was a part of the webinar audience. We couldn't do these webinars without you. We plan on having a lot more of these virtual webinars, so please stay tuned and be looking for registration links and webinar invitations for those. This webinar was recorded and the presentation slides, if Reese is okay with it, will be shared along with the recording link the start of next week. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or follow up with this. And if there's nothing else, everyone have a great rest of your week.
Bye. Thank you.